Welcome to tonight's tale, where every shadow hides a secret and every step might lead you closer to madness. This story is not for the faint of heart. If you enjoy dark tales that linger long after the lights go out, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tonight's journey will take you to a place whispered about in fear, where those who enter never return the same. Remember this warning. Go there, and you'll lose your mind. I first heard the warning from an old woman who lived in the crumbling apartment block across from mine. She was small and frail, her back permanently bent, her face wrinkled like dried paper, but her eyes were sharp and feverish. She stopped me one evening as I carried groceries up the steps. Without so much as a greeting, she grabbed my sleeve and hissed, "Don't go near that place. You'll never come back whole. You'll lose yourself piece by piece." At first, I thought she was rambling, as the elderly often do, but her grip was iron and her gaze unblinking. "What place?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though her intensity unsettled me. She leaned closer, her sour breath hot against my ear. "The house by the quarry, the one with the broken windows and the red door. People go in, but they don't come out right, if they come out at all." I laughed awkwardly and nodded, but the image of the house came instantly to mind. I had passed it dozens of times on my way to work. It stood alone at the edge of the old quarry, its walls leaning slightly, as though the earth beneath it was ready to swallow it whole. The paint peeled in strips, the roof sagged, and the door was indeed an unnatural shade of crimson, faded in places to something like dried blood. For days afterward, I couldn't shake her words. Friends told me stories about the place. Urban legends about teenagers sneaking in and vanishing, about vagrants who sought shelter there and were later found wandering the streets, babbling nonsense until they collapsed. No one seemed to know the truth, but everyone agreed on one thing. The house was wrong. I told myself I wouldn't go, that I wasn't the kind of fool who chased ghost stories. But each time I passed it, I felt my eyes drawn to the red door, as if the building itself were aware of me, waiting for me to acknowledge it. One night, unable to resist, I stopped at the fence. The moon was high, its pale light washing the house in cold silver. The windows reflected nothing, only void, like open mouths swallowing the night. The silence around it was oppressive, so complete it seemed the crickets and wind had chosen to avoid the place entirely. I gripped the rusted bars of the fence and peered in. That was when I noticed the door. It was open, just a crack, though I had always seen it closed before. From that narrow slit of darkness, I felt something. Not a breeze, not sound, but a pull like invisible fingers hooking into my chest, urging me forward. My heart pounded. I told myself I'd just look for a second, just peek inside. Then I would leave and prove to myself it was all nonsense. I climbed the fence. My shoes scraped against the metal, the sound jarringly loud in the silence. I dropped down on the other side and stood facing the house. Its walls loomed taller than they ever had from the street. The door waited. I took a breath, stepped forward, and laid my hand against the faded redwood. The surface was cold, almost wet, though no rain had fallen that day. With the faintest push, the door swung inward, the creak echoing through the hollow chambers inside. And in that moment, I swore I heard something, a whisper, low and sibilant, curling out from the darkness within. "Come closer." The air inside was thick and stale, carrying the faint stench of mold and rust. My flashlight's beam wavered across the floor, catching on dust motes that drifted lazily through the gloom. The boards groaned beneath my weight, and each creak seemed to echo back a fraction of a second too late, as though the house had to think before responding. The hallway stretched longer than it should have. From the outside, the house looked small, barely 2 stories. But inside, the corridor seemed endless, lined with warped wallpaper that curled back like rotting skin. Faded pictures hung crookedly, their glass faces reflecting my trembling light. None of the frames held images, only blank, yellowed paper where photographs had once been. A staircase rose at the far end, its banister wrapped in cobwebs so thick they looked like gauze. As I drew closer, I saw dark stains climbing the wood, brown and flaking, unmistakably old blood. My throat tightened, but I told myself it could be rust, paint, anything but what it looked like. I climbed carefully, the steps sagging under me. The silence pressed in, so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. At the top of the stairs, the hallway forked. To the left, the wallpaper peeled in long strips, exposing what that looked wet and pulsing faintly like veins beneath skin. To the right, a door stood ajar, faint light spilling from the gap. I chose the light. The room was bare except for a broken chair in the corner and a mirror propped against the wall. My flashlight's beam landed on the glass and froze. The reflection wasn't me. It was someone else. A man stood in the mirror, tall and gaunt, with sunken eyes and a mouth stretched into a grin too wide to be human. He wore tattered clothing, dark with stains, and his head tilted at an unnatural angle, as if his neck had been broken but left to dangle. I staggered back, nearly dropping my light. The man in the mirror did not move. He only stared, his grin widening, teeth impossibly sharp, gleaming in the dim glow. For a moment, I thought I heard something beneath the silence, a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging along wood. It grew louder, closer, though the reflection never shifted. I reached out, almost without realizing, and brushed my fingertips against the mirror surface. It was ice cold, and then the reflection blinked. I yanked my hand back and stumbled into the hallway. The scratching followed me, running along the walls as though something unseen crawled just beyond sight. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The house wanted me to. And I knew, if I turned around, if I gave it that one acknowledgement, I'd never leave sane. I ran down the hallway, flashlight beam jerking wildly. Doors lined the corridor on either side, every one of them closed tight. As I passed, their handles rattled as though unseen hands inside were trying to get out. My footsteps hammered on the boards, but there was another sound beneath them, soft padding like bare feet chasing me. At the end of the hallway, I burst into a wide room with tall ceilings. Moonlight streamed in through a shattered skylight, bathing the room in cold silver. Dust swirled like smoke in the beam, and beneath it all stood a single object, another door. This one was different. Unlike the rest of the house's rotting wood, this door was pristine, smooth black, polished to a mirror shine. No handle, no hinges, just a surface that absorbed the moonlight. I approached cautiously, each step weighted with dread. As I drew near, my reflection came into view, warped and stretched by the black sheen. But it wasn't only me. Behind my reflection, faint and blurred, was another figure. The same gaunt man from the mirror upstairs. He leaned closer, though the glassy surface never moved. His grin widened, splitting his face like a wound. His lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't hear, but I could feel them vibrate in my chest. Closer. The pressure built inside my skull, a ringing in my ears that drowned out thought. My body leaned forward against my will, forehead almost brushing the surface. The darkness within the door swirled, shapes shifting like something alive just beneath the skin of reality. I snapped back with a gasp, stumbling away. The reflection's smile faltered for the first time, twisting into something uglier, anger. The figure's hand pressed against the inside of the door, leaving a smear of black that dripped like ink. Then the surface rippled. The door pulsed outward as though breathing, and cracks split across the polished wood. From the gaps, a sound leaked, faint at first, then rising, whispers, dozens of voices overlapping, each one pleading, screaming, begging to be let out. I clamped my hands over my ears and ran. Behind me, the whispers rose to a shriek, the black door rattling against its unseen frame. I didn't look back, not even when the floorboards beneath me bent and warped like something alive. I just ran deeper into the house, where the air grew colder and the whispers never stopped echoing inside my skull. The deeper I went, the less the house resembled a house at all. The corridors curved impossibly, bending into angles that made no sense. Sometimes the walls were too close, forcing me sideways through the dark. Sometimes they stretched outward, vast and cavernous, like the ribs of a beast. My flashlight began to flicker, its weak glow struggling against the shadows. In the distance, I saw faint shapes, chairs, tables, a rocking horse, all scattered randomly, like props discarded after a nightmare play. None of them felt real. I tried to remind myself this was just a building. Just wood, plaster, and dust. But the air itself vibrated, carrying a low hum that resonated inside my bones. Every breath felt like I was inhaling static. I turned a corner and froze. The hallway ahead was filled with people. Dozens of them. They stood shoulder to shoulder, their backs facing me. Their skin was pale, stretched thin over bone, hair hanging in greasy strands. None of them moved. I lifted my light, and every head snapped around in unison. Their faces were blank, smooth flesh where eyes and mouths should be. Yet somehow, I felt them staring straight into me. A chorus of whispers rose from the empty faces, words I couldn't understand, a language that scraped against my skull. My legs refused to move. My light trembled in my grip. Then one of them stepped forward. The skin on its face split open, tearing like wet paper, revealing teeth where there should have been none. I ran. The whispering grew louder, a wave of static that chased me through twisting halls. I didn't dare look back. Their footsteps followed, slapping the boards in a grotesque rhythm. The house shook, walls bowing inward, ceiling dropping lower with every step. I burst into a stairwell, plunging downward 2 steps at a time. The air grew colder, damper, filled with the stench of rot. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. Behind me, the faceless things screamed in voices that weren't human. At the bottom, I found another door. Unlike the black one before, this was old, wooden, half-rotten, barely clinging to its hinges. I slammed it shut behind me and pressed my back against it. Silence. The whispers were gone. I was alone. For now. The room I'd stumbled into was small, lit faintly by a single bulb swaying from the ceiling. The walls were lined with shelves, each filled with jars. At first, I thought they held pickled specimens, animals maybe, but as I drew closer, I realized the truth. Faces. Each jar contained a face, skin peeled clean from the bone, floating in murky liquid. Their eyes were wide open, mouths frozen mid-scream. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, hundreds of jars stacked neatly, labeled with dates. My stomach lurched. The dates weren't years, they were times. Hours and minutes, carved carefully into the glass. I stepped back, my foot knocking against something soft. I turned and saw a body slumped against the wall. Skinless, faceless. A fresh one. The bulb flickered. From the shadows between the shelves, something shifted. A tall figure stepped forward, cloaked in black rags that dragged along the floor. Its hands were long and skeletal, each finger ending in a blackened nail. Where its head should have been was only a mass of shifting shadows. From within, dozens of stolen faces flickered like slides on a projector, mouths opening and closing soundlessly. One of the faces spoke, a broken whisper. "Don't look at him." I stumbled backward, my chest heaving. The figure reached out, fingers curling. The faces within its head screamed all at once, a chorus that rattled the shelves. The jars trembled, liquid sloshing violently. I turned and ran, shoving past the faceless corpse, not daring to glance back. The shelves crashed down behind me, glass shattering, screams spilling into the air. The house didn't want me to leave, and neither did he. The hallway twisted again, dragging me deeper. My light was nearly dead now, glowing in weak pulses. Every shadow looked alive, twitching at the edge of vision. I kept moving, hand against the wall, to steady myself. The wallpaper here was damp, pulsing faintly like it had veins. Every time I touched it, I swore I felt a heartbeat. Finally, I reached another door. This one wasn't wood or black glass. It was iron. Rusted, scarred, covered in scratches like something had tried to claw its way out. I hesitated only a moment before pulling it open. A rush of cold air hit me, carrying the scent of earth and stone. A staircase spiraled downward into darkness, far deeper than the house should have allowed. I descended. The deeper I went, the louder the sound became. A wet dripping, echoing endlessly, accompanied by a faint rhythmic thud. My chest tightened. It sounded like a heartbeat. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a cavern. The walls weren't stone, they were flesh. Pale, slick-veined. The dripping came from above, where dark liquid oozed down the pulsing walls. In the center of the cavern stood a table. Wooden, rotting, but laid out like an altar, and upon it a book. Its cover was bound in leather, dark and cracked, the surface moving as though something crawled beneath it. I stepped forward, compelled by something I couldn't resist. My hand hovered over the book, and then it opened on its own. Pages flipped wildly, words scrawling across them in black ink that bled as I watched. Symbols I couldn't recognize burned into my vision, searing my mind with their meaning. And I understood. This wasn't just a house. It was alive, and it was hungry. The pages screamed as they turned, voices rising from the paper itself. My head throbbed, blood pounding in my ears. I slammed the book shut, but the voices didn't stop. They only grew louder, vibrating the cavern walls. From the shadows, movement stirred. Shapes peeled themselves from the fleshy walls, dripping black liquid. They stood tall, impossibly thin, their limbs bending wrong. Their heads were smooth and blank, but their chests split open, revealing rows of gnashing teeth where hearts should be. I stumbled back, the altar shaking beneath me. The book pulsed, its cover throbbing like living skin. One of the creatures stepped closer. Its chest mouth opened wide, a chorus of voices spilling out, pleading, screaming, sobbing. I recognized some of them. Voices I'd heard before. Faces from the jars. They weren't just victims. They were still here, still alive. The creature lunged, and I ran. My light died completely, leaving me in total blackness. But the cavern glowed faintly now, veins beneath the fleshy walls pulsing with red light. I sprinted up the stairs, the creatures shrieking behind me. The walls quivered, veins bulging, dripping more black liquid. The house was awake now, fully aware of me, and it wasn't going to let me go. I burst through the iron door, slamming it behind me. My chest burned, lungs clawing for air. The whispers returned, louder than ever, filling every corner of the hall. The house groaned, the floor buckling beneath me. Doors opened and slammed shut on their own, walls bending inward like ribs trying to crush me. I turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hall stood the black door again. The same polished surface, flawless and wrong. This time, it was already open. Inside, darkness churned like a storm. Shapes moved within it, twisting, writhing. At the threshold stood the gaunt man from the mirror, grinning with broken teeth. He raised one skeletal hand and beckoned me closer. I staggered back, shaking my head, but my feet betrayed me, dragging me forward against my will. The whispers rose to a scream, pressing against my skull until blood dripped from my nose. Closer, he mouthed again. I fought it with everything I had, slamming myself against the wall, clawing at the pulsing wallpaper. But the darkness reached out, tendrils stretching from the open door, wrapping around my arms, my throat, pulling me closer. I screamed, but no sound came out. And then, just before I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut. The tendrils vanished. The whispers cut off, and I was alone. The silence was worse than the noise. I stumbled down the hallway, every nerve screaming. My clothes were soaked with sweat, my throat raw. The air grew heavier with every step, pressing down on me like deep water. I reached another door and shoved it open. Inside was a child's bedroom, toys scattered across the floor, a small bed tucked against the wall. The wallpaper here was bright, decorated with faded stars and moons. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Then the toys moved. The stuffed animals lifted their heads in unison, button eyes glinting. The rocking horse began to sway on its own. The blots on the floor rearranged themselves, spelling out a single word. Stay. The bed creaked. Slowly, the blanket slid back, revealing a child lying beneath it. A boy, pale and thin, eyes wide open. He turned his head toward me, lips parting. His voice was a whisper carried on 1,000 echoes. Don't look at him. And then his face peeled away, skin sloughing off in strips, revealing nothing beneath. The toy screamed. I bolted from the room, the door slamming shut behind me. The void swallowed me whole. I expected impact, bone-shattering pain. Instead, I drifted weightless, suspended in endless dark. Whispers curled around me, soft at first, then growing louder. Shapes swam in the black, faces distorted and screaming, their mouths stretched wider than humanly possible. They brushed past me, their cold skin leaving trails of frost across my arms. One of them stopped in front of me. A woman, her eyes gouged out, her jaw unhinged. Her voice was a rasp inside my skull. "You can't leave. He won't let you." I tried to scream, but the void swallowed my voice. More faces swirled around me, thousands of them, all whispering the same phrase in unison. "Don't look at him." The darkness twisted, coalescing into a shape. The gaunt man emerged, towering above me, his grin splitting his head in half. His arms stretched wide, impossibly long, reaching across the void. He leaned close, his breath cold against my skin. "You already have." And then the void spat me out. Open Book Part 12. I hit the floor hard, gasping for air. I was back in the hallway, the walls pulsing around me. My body ached, but I was alive. For now. The whispers didn't stop this time. They crawled beneath my skin, burrowing into my thoughts. Every shadow held his grin. Every creak of the house echoed his voice. I staggered forward, desperate for any escape. My hand brushed against the doorknob, cold and slick. I pushed it open. Inside was a bathroom, tiles cracked and mold-stained. The mirror above the sink was shattered, shards littering the floor. I stepped inside, and every shard of glass turned toward me, reflecting not my face, but his. Dozens of him, grinning from every angle. The reflections moved on their own, mouths opening wide, tongues black and writhing. They spoke in unison, a guttural chant that shook the room. "See him, know him, become him." The shards rattled violently, lifting from the floor, spinning in the air like blades. I ducked as one sliced past my head, embedding in the wall. Another grazed my arm, drawing blood. The reflections laughed. I fled the bathroom, slamming the door shut, heart pounding. Blood dripped from my arm, staining the pulsing wallpaper. And for the first time, the house reacted. It shuddered violently, groaning like a wounded animal. My blood had woken something deeper. I hit the floor hard, gasping for air. I was back in the hallway, the walls pulsing around me. My body ached, but I was alive. For now. The whispers didn't stop this time. They crawled beneath my skin, burrowing into my thoughts. Every shadow held his grin. Every creak of the house echoed his voice. I staggered forward, desperate for any escape. My hand brushed against the doorknob, cold and slick. I pushed it open. Inside was a bathroom, tiles cracked and mold-stained. The mirror above the sink was shattered, shards littering the floor. I stepped inside, and every shard of glass turned toward me, reflecting not my face, but his. Dozens of him grinning from every angle. The reflections moved on their own, mouths opening wide, tongues black and writhing. They spoke in unison, a guttural chant that shook the room. "See him, know him, become him." The shards rattled violently, lifting from the floor, spinning in the air like blades. I ducked as one sliced past my head, embedding in the wall. Another grazed my arm, drawing blood. The reflections laughed. I fled the bathroom, slamming the door shut, heart pounding. Blood dripped from my arm, staining the pulsing wallpaper. And for the first time, the house reacted. It shuddered violently, groaning like a wounded animal. My blood had woken something deeper. The hallway buckled, floorboards snapping upward like jagged teeth. The walls bled where my blood had touched them, thick black liquid oozing from the veins in the wallpaper. I stumbled forward, nearly falling as the ground shifted beneath me. The whispers grew louder, merging into a single voice. His voice. "You belong here." I screamed back, my voice hoarse, desperate. "No." The house laughed. Not him, the house itself. The walls quaked with it, dust raining from the ceiling. Doors slammed open and shut in rhythm with the laughter. I ran, no longer caring where. My only thought was escape. At last, I reached another stairwell, this one leading up. I climbed frantically, the steps cracking beneath me. At the top, I found a door. Wooden, plain, almost normal. I shoved it open and staggered inside. It was my bedroom. My bed, my desk, the posters on the wall. Everything exactly as I'd left it. For a heartbeat, hope flared in my chest. Maybe I had escaped. Maybe it had all been a dream. Then I saw the mirror. In its reflection, my room was wrong. The walls writhed, covered in faces pressing against the surface. My reflection stood still, grinning with his mouth. And behind him, the gaunt man loomed. I turned from the mirror, heart hammering. But my room was empty. No faces, no man, just silence. I forced myself to breathe, gripping the edge of the desk. "It's not real," I whispered. "It's not real." The lights flickered. The posters peeled from the walls, curling like burnt paper. My bed sagged, sinking into the floor as black liquid spread from beneath it. The desk crumbled into rot beneath my hands. And the mirror cracked. My reflection didn't. It grinned wider, eyes hollow, teeth jagged. Slowly, it raised its hand, pressing it against the inside of the glass. The surface rippled, and then the hand came through. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist, pulling hard. I screamed, yanking back, but its grip was iron. The glass split wider, my reflection dragging itself out, inch by inch, grinning the entire time. When it finally stood before me, I froze. It was me. Every detail, every scar, every movement. Except the grin. The grin never left. My double stepped closer, movements jerky, unnatural. Its eyes were black voids swallowing light. The grin stretched wider, splitting its cheeks until blood ran down its face. I backed away, stumbling over the collapsing bed. "Stay away." It tilted its head, mimicking me perfectly, even my fear. Then it lunged. We crashed to the floor, its hands clawing at my throat. I thrashed, punching, kicking, but it was like fighting myself in a nightmare. Every move mirrored, every strike countered. It leaned close, whispering in my own voice. "You are me now." I felt its cold breath fill my lungs, choking me. My vision darkened, edges closing in. With the last of my strength, I grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor and drove it into its throat. It didn't bleed. It laughed, even as the shard protruded from its neck. And then it dissolved, melting into black liquid that soaked into the floor, leaving me gasping, alone again. But I wasn't relieved, because its grin remained, burned into my mind, into my skin, like it had never left. The house was no longer a house. The walls melted, floors splitting into gaping maws lined with teeth. The ceiling dripped black saliva, tendrils hanging down like tongues. The air itself throbbed, thick with rot and whispers. I staggered through it, no sense of direction left. Every corner led deeper. Every door opened to another nightmare. Finally, I reached a vast chamber, the heart of the house. Literally, a massive, pulsing heart filled the room, suspended by veins that burrowed into the walls. It beat slowly, each thud shaking the floor. Black liquid oozed from its surface, pooling beneath it. And at its base stood him, the gaunt man. His grin was wider than ever, splitting his head nearly in two. His arms stretched unnaturally long, fingertips brushing the floor. His voice filled the chamber, though his mouth never moved. "You came to me." I shook my head, backing away. "I didn't. You looked. You saw. Now you are mine." The heart beat faster, walls trembling. Faces pressed out of the flesh around me, screaming silently. My legs trembled, every instinct screaming to flee. But there was nowhere left to run. He stepped closer, his grin swallowing the room. "All who see me become me." His shadow stretched, wrapping around my feet, pinning me in place. The heart pounded, veins bursting, spraying black liquid across the floor. The faces in the walls screamed louder, their mouths opening impossibly wide. I struggled, pulling against the shadow, but it only tightened. My skin burned where it touched me, veins darkening beneath the surface. He reached out, one skeletal hand brushing my cheek. My vision blurred, blood rushing in my ears. The whispers filled my skull, not from outside, but from within. They weren't his voice anymore. They were mine. My reflection appeared again, this time not in glass, but in the very air before me. It stepped out, grinning, black veins crawling across its skin. It spoke in my voice, but layered with his. You are me. I am you. Forever. The shadow spread higher, swallowing my body inch by inch. My chest burned, heart pounding in rhythm with the monstrous heart above. My skin split, dark liquid oozing from the cracks. I screamed, but my voice came out wrong, twisted, distorted, echoing like his. The faces in the walls watched silently now, waiting. The gaunt man leaned close, his grin splitting into something infinite, something endless. And he whispered the final words. Don't look at him. I burst through the iron door, slamming it behind me. My chest burned, lungs clawing for air. The whispers returned, louder than ever, filling every corner of the hall. The house groaned, the floor buckling beneath me. Doors opened and slammed shut on their own, walls bending inward like ribs trying to crush me. I turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hall stood the black door again. The same polished surface, flawless and wrong. This time, it was already open. Inside, darkness churned like a storm. Shapes moved within it, twisting, writhing. At the threshold stood the gaunt man from the mirror, grinning with broken teeth. He raised one skeletal hand and beckoned me closer. I staggered back, shaking my head, but my feet betrayed me, dragging me forward against my will. The whispers rose to a scream, pressing against my skull until blood dripped from my nose.